The city of Buenos Aires can't offer history like Rome and Paris. It doesn't have a beach to offer like in the Caribbean. It doesn't have gastronomy on offer like Italy. It doesn't have waterfalls or glaciers. The city of Buenos Aires has tango, he said. The Federal Assembly of Tango Workers said the industry used to employ around 7,000 people in Argentina. But since the start of the COVID-19 health crisis, 1/5 of Buenos Aires' 200 tango clubs have closed permanently. Before the pandemic, there were about 40 tango footwear and clothing companies. Now, about 12 remain. Although tango is the most famous part of Argentine culture, the industry does not get any special government support. Tango workers suffered from permanent job insecurity long before the pandemic, said Diego Benbasset, a musician with the Mysteriosa Buenos Aires Orchestra and a spokesman for the Tango Workers Union. He said there were never any public policies designed for tango, so that is why we are so vulnerable. Dancer Mora Godoy once taught tango steps to America's former president, Barack Obama. She has received standing ovations for her international performances. But COVID-19 forced her to close her dance school. I did 419 shows with my tango company in 2019. We had done more than 100 in 2020 by the time everything was closed. And this madness, this sadness, this world tragedy began, she said. I'm Katie Weaver.
Welcome to Ask a Teacher. This week we answer a question from Shinji in Japan.
Tudod, mit csinál az emberrel egy ütközés egy ilyen sebességgel?
I think I once learned the expression, how come, which I hear is to explain reasons. For example,
tarts jobbra.
How come the
A
schools
jobb
were
oldali sáv.
canceled?
Egyébként a nők nem szokták tudni, mi az, hogy
But
tarts
I
jobbra.
rarely come
Érdemes a
across
jobb
this
oldali sávot
construction
váltani. Ez ezt
recently,
jelenti.
both in writing and speaking. I am not quite sure about the distinction between this and why. If it would be all right with you, I would appreciate your lesson on it.
Utána, ha jól nézem,
Sincerely
akkor jobbra.
yours, Shinji, Japan. And here's the answer. Dear Shinji, when I started to look into this question, I found that, as you experienced, the expression is not as common now as it was in the past. The first use in American English is recorded around 1848.
Jó estét kívánok! Én az önök GPS-e vagyok a továbbiakban. Szívesen állok rendelkezésre, amennyiben japán partnerüket valakinek meg kell vágnia. Végül minden nőt un valaki, ahogy szokták volt mondani, és ezügyben rendelkezésükre állok bármiben. Kevésbé vagyok jó, de abban is segítek némelykor, hogyha útvonalat szeretnének választani, de abban azért ritkában forduljanak hozzám, ha szabad kérnem. Egyet nem bírok, nem, bocsánat, kettőt nem bírok összesen. A kompon hányok, ha lehetséges, akkor arra nem menjünk, vagy arra válaszolok egy másik hangot, illetve azt gyűlölöm, de attól kifejezetten rémült vagyok, hogyha elmegy a GPS vétel. Kérem, biztosítsa folyamatosan a GPS vételt. Egyebekben pedig jó estét kívánok! Én az önök GPS-e vagyok a továbbiakban. Szívesen állok rendelkezésre, amennyiben japán partnerüket valakinek meg kell hágnia. Végül minden nőt un valaki, ahogy szokták volt mondani, és ezügyben rendelkezésükre állok bármiben. Kevésbé vagyok jó, de abban is segítek némelykor, hogyha útvonalat szeretnének választani, de abban azért ritkában forduljanak hozzám, ha szabad kérnem. Egyet nem bírok, nem, bocsánat, kettőt nem bírok összesen. A kompon hányok, ha lehetséges, akkor arra nem menjünk, vagy arra válaszolnak egy másik hangot, illetve azt gyűlölöm, de attól kifejezetten rémült vagyok, hogyha elmegy a GPS vétel. Kérem, biztosítsa folyamatosan a GPS vételt. Egyebekben pedig jó vezetést kívánok, és jó hangulatot, és japán.
When we use why to ask a question, we must change to the usual English word order. Let us begin with the statement. you are cooking lunch. To ask a question with why, you would change the order of the subject, you, and the verb, are, as in this question.
Menjél a balra.
Why are you cooking lunch? But when we use how
Balra
come,
kell menni.
the word order of the statement does not change. How come you are cooking lunch? It could be that the simplicity of this question form makes it easier for children to use and gives it a more casual feel. I hope this helps you understand the expression, Shinji. What question do you have about American English? Send us an email at
Tarts jobbra, a jobb
learningenglish@voanews.com.
oldali sáv. Egyébként a nők nem szokták tudni, mi az, hogy tarts jobbra. Érdemes a jobb oldali sávot váltani. Ez ezt jelenti.
Now, the special English program, American Stories.
Utána, ha jól nézem, akkor jobbra.
Today, we begin a new series from a book by American writer Edgar Rice Burroughs. The book is called A Princess of Mars. It is the first book in a series that Mr. Burroughs wrote about a man who travels to Mars during the last years of the 1800s. There, the man meets strange beings and sees strange sights. At first, he is a captive, then a warrior, and after many battles, a prince of a royal family. Shep O'Neill begins the story of A Princess of Mars.
Mi van? Átfestjük az autót pirosra? Belül?
Possible I am 100, maybe more. I cannot tell because I have never aged as other men do. So far as I can remember, I have always been a man of about 30. I appear today as I did 40 years ago.
Se jobbra, se balra, egyenesen.
I feel that I cannot go on living forever. Someday, I will die the real death from which there is no escape. I do not know why I should fear death, I, who have died 2 times, and am still alive. I have never told this story. I know the human mind will not believe what it cannot understand. I cannot explain what happened to me. I can only tell of the 10 years my dead body lay
Én értem, hogy van elég zsák, de
in an Arizona cave. My name is John Carter. I am from the state of Virginia. At the close of the Civil War, I found myself without a home, without money, and without work. I decided the best plan was to search for gold in the great deserts of the American Southwest. I spent almost a year searching for gold with another former soldier, Captain James Powell, also of Virginia. We were extremely lucky. In the winter of 1865, we found rocks that held gold. Powell was trained as a mining engineer. He said we had uncovered over $1 million worth of gold in only 3 months. But the work was slow, with only 2 men and not much equipment. So we decided Powell should go to the nearest settlement to seek equipment and men to help us with the work. On March 3rd, 1866, Powell said goodbye. he rode his horse down the mountain toward the valley. I followed his progress for several hours. The morning Powell left was like all mornings in the deserts of the great Southwest, clear and beautiful. Not much later, I looked across the valley. I was surprised to see 3 riders in the same place where I had last seen my friend. After watching for some time, I decided the 3 riders must be hostile Indians. Powell, I knew, was well armed and an experienced soldier, but I knew he would need my aid. I found my weapons, placed a saddle on my horse, and started as fast as possible down the trail taken by Powell. I followed as quickly as I could until dark. About 9 o'clock, the moon became very bright. I had no difficulty following Powell's trail. I soon found the trail left by the 3 riders following Powell. I knew they were Indians. I was sure they wanted to capture Powell. Suddenly I heard shots far ahead of me. I hurried ahead as fast as I could. Soon I came to a small camp. Several hundred Apache Indians were in the center of the camp. I could see Powell on the ground. I did not even think about what to do. I just acted. I pulled out my guns and began shooting. The Apaches were surprised and fled. I forced my horse into the camp and toward Powell. I reached down and pulled him up on the horse by his belt. I urged the horse to greater speed. The Apaches, by now, realized that I was alone and quickly began to follow. We were soon in very rough country. The trail I chose began to rise sharply. It went up and up. I followed the trail for several hundred meters more until I came to the mouth of a large cave. It was almost morning now. I got off my horse and laid Powell on the ground. I tried to give him water, but it was no use. Powell was dead. I laid his body down and continued to the cave. I began to explore the cave. I was looking for a safe place to defend myself, or perhaps for a way out. But I became very sleepy. It was a pleasant feeling. My body became extremely heavy. I had trouble moving. Soon, I had to lay down against the side of the cave. For some reason, I could not move my arms or legs. I lay facing the opening of the cave. I could see part of the trail that had led me here. And now, I could see the Apaches. They had found me, but I could do nothing. Within a minute, one of them came into the cave. He looked at me, but he came no closer. His eyes grew wide. His mouth opened. He had a look of terror on his face. He looked behind me for a moment and then fled. Suddenly, I heard a low noise behind me. So could the rest of the Apaches. They all turned and fled. The sound became louder, but still I could not move. I could not turn my head to see what was behind me. All day, I lay like this. I tried again to rise, and again, but I still could not move. Then I heard a sharp sound. It was like a steel wire breaking.
Én nem vagyok benne biztos, hogy ilyen rohadt gyorsan kéne menni.
My back was against the cave wall. I looked down. There before me lay my body.
Átfestjük az autót pirosra? Belül?
For a few moments, I stood looking at my body. I could not bring myself to touch it. I was very frightened. The sounds of the cave and the sight of my body forced me away. I slowly backed to the opening of the cave. I turned to look at the Arizona night. I could see 1,000 stars.
És ugye, ha a sávok között gondolkodik, hogy melyiket válassza, akkor érdemes egy kicsit így balra tartani. Később megtérül.
I could not stop looking at it. It was Mars, the red planet, the red god of war. It seemed to pull me near. Then, for a moment, I closed my eyes. There was an instant.
Jobbra kellene tartani, jó? Mert aztán jönnek a nyilak, amelyeket felfestenek a betonra, és csak csodálkozik.
I was in deep, dreamless, peaceful sleep.
Majd hajtsunk ki a jobb oldalon.
A very strange land. I immediately knew then I was on Mars. Not once did I question this fact. My mind told me I was on Mars, as your mind tells you that you are upon Earth. You do not question the fact. Nor did I. I found myself lying on a bed of yellow-colored grass that covered the land for kilometers. The time was near the middle of the day, and the sun was shining full upon me. It was warm. I decided to do a little exploring. Springing to my feet, I received my first Martian surprise. The effort to stand carried me into the Martian air to the height of about 1 meter. I landed softly upon the ground.
Tarts jobbra szerintem. Azt hiszem.
I found that I must learn to walk all over again. My muscles were used to the gravity of Earth. Mars has less gravity. My attempts to walk resulted in jumps and hops, which took me into
Majd utána a bal oldalt megtekintve a jobb oldalon hajtunk ki.
I soon learned that it took much less effort for me to move on Mars than it did on Earth. Near me was a small, low wall. Carefully, I made my way to the wall and looked over. It was filled with eggs, some already broken open. Small, green creatures were in them. They looked at me with huge red eyes. As I watched the fierce-looking creatures, I failed to hear 20 full-grown Martians coming from behind me. They had come without warning. As I turned, I saw them. One was coming at me with a huge spear, with its sharp tip pointed at my heart.
Tudod, mit csinál az emberrel egy ütközés egy ilyen sebességnél?
This is Bob Doty.
Szép sebesség, gratulálok. Én meg ugye álmomban szeretnék meghalni, mint a nagyapám, és nem üvöltve sikoltozva, mint az utasai.
The voice of John Carter was Shep O'Neill. Our program was written for radio, produced and directed by Paul Thompson. Join us again next week for the next part of the Edgar Rice Burroughs story,
Én értem, hogy van légzsák, de ennyivel.
On the special English program American Stories on the Voice of America.
That's our program for today. Listen again tomorrow to learn English from stories from around the world. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson.
Tell us how you are doing at facebook.com/VOA1 The Hits.
Hello, and welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Anna Mateo. This program is made for English learners, so we speak a bit slower, and we use words and sentences especially written for people learning English. Here are the stories we have for you on today's program. First, the Education Report. Dan Friedel talks about career training in the United States. Gregory Stockel brings us a story about a new use for an old building in Ukraine. I will return with this week's words and their stories. Today in the United States, it is Father's Day. So we will celebrate fathers. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. We will finish our 30 minutes together with our series on America's presidents, written and hosted by Kelly Jean Kelly. But first, the Education Report.
One morning in June, A.J. Muir, an 18-year-old high school student from Springfield, Virginia, was taking a test in an empty classroom. It was not an English or math test. Instead, it was a test that recognized his skills in keeping computer networks safe, a field called cybersecurity. Muir is going to college this autumn, but he possibly could get a good job tomorrow after passing the test. Muir had prepared for the test by taking classes at Edison Academy. The school is one of the Career and Technical Education CTE centers in Fairfax County. Students at the centers take traditional classes such as English and history, in addition to technical ones like cybersecurity and information technology. If President Joe Biden's $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan is approved by the U.S. Congress, there will be a strong demand for CTE students like Muir. Companies will need people who know how to work with metal and electricity. They will need workers to build parts for roads, bridges, and places to charge batteries
Most van az, hogy majd aztán később fordulunk mindenfelé, sávot váltunk, meg ilyesmi, jobbra kellene tartani.
Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce showed that there are 30 million jobs in the U.S. paying $55,000 per year that do not require a college degree. The jobs require the kind of education that comes from the CTE classes. Joseph Wolf teaches electrical work, construction, and engineering at Edison Academy. Most students who take his classes do not go straight to college.
We're not anti-college. We just provide an alternate path to a traditional college route.
People who want to work as
Nekem tényleg mindegy, hogy
electricians
mennyivel mély,
need up
tudod,
to
mert
4
én végül
years
is
of
egy
training
viszonylag
to get
strapabírótóban
started.
vagyok. De biztos
But
vagy
the
benne,
students
hogy
who
te is?
leave Wolf's class are already 1 year ahead. They can work and study their trade at the same time. Wolf added that some of his former students with more experience earn close to $100,000 per year. The U.S. government started paying for career and technical training as early as 1917.
Mi van?
It is
Átfestjük az
sometimes
autót
called
pirosra?
vocational
Belül?
training. In those days, students learned to work with wood and metal and were
Most az a
able to
mutatvány,
get
hogy egyenesen
well-paying
kéne tovább
jobs
menni, úgy, hogy
without
előre.
going to college.
Rengeteg közlekedési baleset
Over
történik,
time,
abból kifolyólag, hogy az
students were
emberek pánikban az
told that
utolsó
a good
pillanatban
future
rángatva a
required a
kormányt váltanak
4-year
sávot,
college
csak azért,
degree.
mert nem tartottak jobbra, amikor pedig a
In many
GPS mondta nekik, hogy
cases,
tarts jobbra.
that is
És ez a
still
pillanat
true.
most van, tarts jobbra.
But Muir is part of a new group of American students who are hearing a different message.
Hungaroring!
College is great, but it comes at a cost.
A 4-year degree from a private university in the U.S. can easily cost over $100,000. At the end of the 4 years, students may have more knowledge, but they are not necessarily ready to join the workforce. Spending less money, students can learn about information technology, nursing, or cybersecurity at community colleges. They can also learn to fix vehicles or cook in a restaurant. Other countries have similar training programs for young people, and some may be better prepared for economic changes than the U.S. I'm Dan Friedel.
Thanks, Dan.
Jobbra kellene tartani. Jobbra, komolyan. Én itt voltam legutóbb, és később már nagyon nehéz lesz kihúzódni.
Next is Gregory Stockel.
Entrepreneurs in Western Ukraine are
Én nem vagyok
turning
benne
a
biztos, hogy ilyen
large
rohadt gyorsan kéne menni.
manufacturing building from Soviet times into a center for education, business, and art. An entrepreneur is a person who starts a business and is willing to risk loss in order to make money. They hope this will drive development in a country that has problems with corruption, political insecurity, and a recession. The disused factory in the city of Ivano-Frankivsk once produced gas meters and other products. Now,
Tudod,
it
mit
is
csinál az
a
emberrel egy
rolling
ütközés
city
egy ilyen
space with a
sebességnél?
green microfarm, a space to show art, offices, and a children's education
Menjünk szépen
group.
egyenesen tovább.
The creators of the Promprilad
Én nem vagyok benne biztos, hogy ilyen rohadt gyorsan kéne menni.
named it after the factory. They bought the 36,000 square meter site in 2019. They have raised more than $8.5 million from local investors for the remodel. The project's co-founder is Chief Executive Officer Yuri
Most az a mutatvány,
Vilu.
hogy egyenesen kéne tovább menni,
We are
úgyhogy előre.
creating an innovation center which will include 4 main fields: education, art, new economy, and urbanism. Why these fields? Because they drive development of any area, any society, he said. Forbes magazine named Ivano-Frankivsk the best city for doing business in Ukraine. It placed ahead of the capital of Kiev and the city of Lviv. Ivano-Frankivsk is in the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains. Corruption is part of life in Ukraine. Also, its economy has been hit hard by the pandemic, falling by 4% last year. Transparency International is a non-profit organization that works to spread information about corruption and suggest policies to fight it. In its 2020 Corruption Perception Index, Transparency International gave Ukraine 33 out of 100 points, where 0 means corruption effectively replaces the government. The project only takes up a sixth of the 36,000 square meter area. It also houses the local government's Department for Investment Policy. I'm Gregory Stockel.
And now, words and their stories from VOA Learning English. On this program, we explore words and sayings in American English. In the United States, we celebrate Father's Day on the third Sunday in June. So, for today's show,